Hey guys, it's Abdel here, and in today's video, I'm actually recording this uh, during trading hours. And so, one of the markets I really wanted to take a look at was Apple. And the reason is, of course, after its blockbuster earnings. So, I wanted to give it a few days to kind of, you know, settle in and see its reaction to the earnings report, which was like a blockbuster all time high ever for the company, and I think in history of profits, and I believe earnings too. So I think they reported somewhere along the lines of like 74.5 billion in revenue, something in that line, 18 billion profit after tax. They sold like 74 million iPhones. Just overall, just an incredible historical quarter, both for them and just ever in business. So I wanted to see how the market would react, and what we can see here. I'm looking at a weekly chart right now, and what we can see here is that the reaction. Let's just zoom back for a day for a second. And here's the day. So you can see that prior to the earnings here, this thing was sort of chopping around right here. It was kind of going back and forth in this range. And then the earnings come out and it pops, and you can see it retest that high. So that retest of the high is very important because it hasn't broken that high, right? And if we kind of go back now from a day down to up to a week, and we kind of get a more condensed, bigger view, what we can see here is that this is an area of resistance. This is an area that Apple is testing and has not been able to successfully break through yet. And that's an important level because if it's going to get to that target that we looked at months ago, right, then it has to get through there. Remember, this is going back several months ago when we were very fortunate enough to have a buy right here, that when we go from the low up to that high, right, the rule that we have is what? Is that when we break and close above here, there's a 70% chance that it attains that 127 extension. Now you can see that 127 extension right there is essentially around $125, right? When you do it precisely, you're right around 125. So 70% chance. Now keep in mind, 70% is not 100, right? So there's a 30% chance it doesn't get there. And I can tell you from experience, I've seen plenty of times where markets sort of, they pop up, they close, and then what ends up, and then see them fizzle back down, right? Apple has been interesting. It popped above, and then it spent the last few months sort of figuring out what it wanted to do, and then we saw a movement back up towards that area. Now we're still a ways off. We're about, as of today, we're about $9, $8 off of that high, off of that 127. From there, we also have a reasonable expectation that the market, that Apple in particular, I'm sorry, will do something of what we call a one-to-one measured move, which is essentially, it's not even looking at necessarily trading technicals. It's simply looking at symmetry to see where that suggests. And you can see that that suggests a move to around 145. And then it could possibly reach the 1618, which is 156. Okay? 155, 156. So when we take this point of view, let's just take the sort of smaller look, and we have the belief that there's a 70% chance that 125 will happen. What's going to be interesting here is that when we zoom back out, let's zoom back out from a monthly now down to a weekly, we can look at this most recent price action here, right? This most recent action. And what I see when I look at this most recent price action is essentially this. I see a market that kind of went sideways for a while, then it broke out, went up, then it kind of came down, right? It kind of chopped in this area, and now it's retesting that level. There's some chop in between, of course, but that's sort of the overall scope, and this dates back to somewhere along September of 2014, right? So we're going now, today's February 2nd. We're going back 3 months, right? Plus. So this area is significant. So when I use this this information that I have, I'm going to bring in my fib again, and here's what you're going to find very interesting. I'm going to draw from the low to that high, right, where I just drew, and I'm going to click that. And again, you can see it kind of, one of the interesting things you'll see, it came right down into the 5618, and then it kind of chopped around and has pushed its way back up. But when I kind of pull back down, what's interesting is where the 127 of this leg, right, this leg occurs right here, the one that I just measured. And that you can see is 126. So you've got this 125 line here, which is from the monthly, and then you got this 126 line right there from the weekly. So to me, that area is ripe to be hit. What it needs to do is obviously break through here. So here's an interesting sort of play you could look for if you're not in this market and you want to potentially get in it, because you have, because the technicals from our end say that 125 will happen very likely, or is likely, not, again, guarantee, and that there's a possibility, again, that we head towards that 140 to 150 area. So what would I do if I'm not in this? Easy. If Apple manages to break above this high, right? If it starts to push above this high, towards the end of the day, you buy it, right? You buy the breakout here, which will be basically 120, right? Once it starts breaking through 120s, you buy it with a obviously reasonable expectation, a high expectation that it's going to get to that 125 level. And then from there, you can hang on to a good portion of your position. I would probably do a majority and look for that move to get towards that 150, right? So that's one of the interesting ways you can sort of play this. Another way you could do it, if you don't want to do it with just stock, if you want to leverage and make a little bit more, is you play it with options, right? So right now it's February. I would probably buy like March options, right? Or maybe you can go even further, April or May, or even go several months out and buy like 145 calls or 140 calls, right? Where that one to one measured move goes. I think it was around 145. You could buy like 140 calls, and again, they'll be cheap now because we're a far ways off from 140. But if this thing kind of moves towards that trajectory and does a one-to-one measure move, as it does in the past, you can see some significant gains. So the point is, and I'm going to be kind of beating this drum a lot, is that you use the larger perspective to get a understanding of where to ride the trend, right? So you use sort of a macro perspective to play the micro game, right? So it allows you to make significant good decisions and ride a possible big trend. I mean, one of the reasons, for example, that we bought here, obviously there was a monthly buy, but there was also, like, we used that and then we drilled down and we looked for more optimum buys, right? More optimal buys here. And you can do that a lot. So I know this, I know that I've been repeating this a lot, but I think it's a very important tactic. And I think that if you're a trader, especially if you're new or even if you're a veteran, this is something that can serve you well because you use the bigger picture to help you kind of understand what the most likely outcome is. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be looking for a break above this on the weekly. I have the daily coming up, but I'm looking a break above this. Once that break starts to happen, actually, I'd look for it on the daily, not the weekly. I would buy. You could even buy like 125 calls, for example, that expire, in like next month, right? You want to buy yourself some time, and then if it gets there, you'll make good money. You'll make, it's a small move compared percentage wise, but those options can yield 20-30% possibly, depending on how quickly it moves, maybe even more. So hopefully that helps. That's my thoughts on Apple right now. I'm definitely gonna be paying more attention to it. For me right now, it's one of the most interesting stocks. I find it to be really, really interesting. One other one I want to take a quick look at right here, and that's been Amazon, which you can see has just exploded on earnings that weren't even that great. It just shows you how the power of the market here. But something to pay attention to is this break that we've just seen happen after some significant kind of build up. So it's kind of been chopping here. Now it's breaking out. So we'll see if it retraces back down here. That might be an opportunity to buy for a move back up. But I think that we're going to see all new retests of the high soon, and then if possible break. And Amazon has been very good with the fibs. We've played it from here to here to here. I mean, all the way up here. These are all. Amazon's just a wonderful stock. It plays fibs very well. I'll be looking for a retracement to see if we can get going. If not, we'll look for other moves. All right, guys. Hope that helps, and we'll see you next time.